I'm back here today with Dave Duval, investment banker with Claiborne Advisors, and we're going to continue a conversation that we have previously held on some important issues in the merger and acquisition field. Hello again, Dave.
Hello again, George.
Now, as you've said, you don't lay out a price expectation to prospective buyers, obviously, the market dictates what value the company is going to generate once it hits the street, so to speak.
That's right.
But I would think that the job you do as an investment banker in posturing that company in the marketplace can have some positive effects. We're obviously working with real historical data that you have to live with, but at the same time, you can explain that data and project that data and suggest economies that might be exercised by the buyer that can change the image of those numbers in a way that are realistic and that the buyer might be able to expect to enjoy after the closing. So talk a little bit about what the realm of the possible is there that can actually add some value coming out of the box.
Well, in the early discussions with a client or a prospective client, part of the reason for asking what their expectations are is to see how realistic they are compared to where the market is. Because I will have frequent discussions, repeated discussions with them about the market and what they can really expect to get in a given time frame, given the current state of the company. And so we'll spend a lot of time on doing everything we can to enhance the value of the company. The company will be worth something in a range determined by the market. I mean, when I was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, we called it, you can't fight the tape.
Yeah.
You can't fight what the market prices are coming across that people are paying for stocks. The same thing is true in the market for companies, in the private market. The market, the buyers and other competitive sellers will determine something about a range where a given company will fall. And my job is to get that company to the high end of that range. And I try to do it by lowering the risks of the company, making sure that the market perceives that those risks are low, because as those risks go down, the perception of value goes up.
Right. And the comfort level of the buyer escalates.
And that's part of the perception. And that this is also comes back to the issue of stage management and getting people ready for the party.
Now, as a part of the process that I have usually been involved with, there comes a certain point in time where the buyer says, I need to talk to your key customers. And there's no way that you can fend that off, and in most cases, nor should you, because hopefully your buyer or your key customers are going to be able to verify your value to them and give that buyer a sense that their business is not at risk after the closing. Do you involve yourself in that process?
Absolutely.
And how do you do that?
By, again, being a part of every conversation. In a transaction not long ago, the mezzanine lender and equity provider insisted on talking to all of the key customers of my client. And I set up the process so that all of the other elements of the contract had been agreed to or fulfilled before we began that process. So that there was no other open item that they could go back to cancel it.
This is a typical approach that I follow as well, so I understand where you're coming from.
And then when I told them that I was going to be on each one of those calls with the customers, the capital provider said, no, we've never done it that way. And I said, well, my client and I insist that you do it that way. And the capital provider got very upset, to put it mildly. And so I told them to call my client, and my client came through the phone at them and said, this is the way it is. And actually, I told them ahead of time, and it worked out, that I would be able to really facilitate those calls. Mm-hmm. Because what I did was to call each of the customers ahead of time, tell them that the company was in the process of being sold, and I wanted to introduce them to the buyers. And I was going to be on the call, and so I made the calls. I conferenced in the capital provider. I was a part of every call. I let the capital provider do all the talking, basically. I didn't have to do very much, but I was there so that if anything had gone wrong, I would have known firsthand exactly what the problem was.
Yeah.
We didn't have a problem. Everything went well. The capital provider ended up being very happy with the whole process, and we closed, and the company thrives today.
What are your preferences when it comes to maintaining confidence of the process?
My preference is to do what the client wants to do. I advise the client in a given situation what I think will best serve their interests. The client has to make a decision how long they think they can be in control of the information getting out. And they should always be in charge of letting it get out if it's about to get out. Mm-hmm. And I've closed transactions on both sides. One where the information was held down and kept quiet until the last moment, and I've done them exactly the opposite, where the first item of business after signing my engagement agreement was where the owner took me out to the production floor and told everybody that the company was being sold. So I've done it both ways, and the issues that sellers are generally most worried about are what will the reactions be of the employees, of the customers, and of the vendors.
Not to mention the competitors.
Well, that gets to the customers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.